I'm Deana.
And I'm Suzanne, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast.
With Deana and Suzanne.
That's us.
The purpose of this podcast is to help you along your healing journey, to become the very best version of you that you can be, and to create the life of your dreams. We want to give you the tools you need to succeed through personal stories, guided meditations, hypnosis, NLP, and self-hypnosis techniques, as well as interviews with experts in a variety of healing modalities, from energy workers and spiritual healers to chiropractors, acupuncturists, holistic medicine, and much, much more.
Yes, and we also want this podcast to be a place where people can come together, share stories, and be reminded that you're not alone. In fact, the healing journey is a lifelong journey, and we are just so thankful that you're choosing us to be a part of your journey and that we have you to be a part of ours as well. And with that being said, let's start the show.
I'm ready when you are.
Hi, everyone. We are so excited and honored because today, all the way from the UK, we've got Tim Box on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so to get started, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and what got you started in your field?
Okay. Do you want the long story or the short story? The potted version is probably what we want, isn't it?
We want the most exciting version.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to hear it all.
Well, it's not. I'd say it's not that exciting because about 15 years ago I was a plumber. So very natural career progression, plumber to hypnotist. I'm sure you'd agree. But it was to be fair, I was a terrible plumber. It wasn't really my calling. So my sort of leaning has always been towards, more thinking about I did philosophy at university, stuff like that, and it was the threat of being handed down the family plumbing company to run that just frightened me into finding something different. And so I started to pursue my interest in hypnosis and how the mind works a little bit more seriously. And that's how it all started, really. And I just went on a weekend course and just it blew my mind. I remember ringing the person that I was with at the time and driving back from the weekend saying, "Oh my God, I've got magic powers. I can't believe it." And it was just that mind-blowing thing, which I'm sure we all know very well, of discovering hypnosis for the first time and the power of the mind and all that sort of thing. And I very much launched myself at it. I'm one of those people that have found all my clients by meeting people, by networking and things like that. So I would be doing 3 or 4, those really early morning meetings that you do where you get up at 4 in the morning and you breakfast with a load of people who've got all, strange and different. That's it. You do 60 seconds. Here's your elevator pitch. What do you do? And that sort of thing. And I just did loads of them. And so I got, I got full time fairly quickly in my desperate attempt to escape the plumbing world. And I just went from there. But I think probably that was part of the journey, though, for me, because probably the reason you're talking to me, anyone talks to me about this, is because I do things slightly differently from most hypnotists or hypnotherapists in that I don't use any trance process. So it's all eyes open, wide awake. And that's really, that's a result of 2 things. First of all, learning hypnosis with phenomena-based stuff straight away, rather than as a relaxation protocol and an eyes closed trance process. And second of all, just getting really, really busy and really, really tired of doing trance work, because I saw many clients of a day, and I get this, some people love trance work and they wouldn't be without it, and that's great. But for me, it was just a drain on my energies, and it kind of made it, borderline unenjoyable to have to do this drawn out, protracted trance process in every session. So I experimented with getting rid of that. And that's kind of the origins of me formulating my own system and my own way of working that doesn't involve any formal, structured hypnotic trance process.
Right. Do you find that it's kind of similar? Are you kind of relating this to maybe NLP? Because with NLP, you don't necessarily do trance, although you may sometimes close your eyes, but you get them switching their thoughts and their brain the way.
I think so I'm not an NLP practitioner, so I can't really say how specifically it differs, but I know that I have no language patterns involved in what I do. There's no there are no techniques or process involved. It is, for me, change work is a conversation, and I don't mean it's conversational hypnosis. I mean, we need to speak directly to the part of your mind currently running the pattern of thought that you don't like, and understand why it's doing it, so that that part can then receive some better information about maybe what it could do instead, you know. So I don't think it resembles NLP in a way that an NLP would recognize, put it that way. I don't think I want to make any claims to being, oh, I do what you do, to an NLP practitioner. I don't think it is. But,
yeah. Well, that's really interesting. In what other ways does what you do differ from, you know, traditional therapeutic methods?
Yeah, there's no kind of scripts. There's no regression. There's no suggestion or direct commands. There are a lot of ways it differs, I think, now I think about it. And I just think it comes from a slightly different starting point in terms of how this stuff works. I think a lot of the time within where we get taught hypnotherapy and hypnosis, we get taught that hypnosis is the thing that unlocks the mind to be able to accept suggestion and different ideas. And I don't, without wishing to, and without wishing to sort of throw anything in the room that is then just going to get booted out of the room, I don't think that's the case. I think all we're doing really is setting up a framework by which the client is able to accept a better strategy emotionally and psychologically, if that makes sense. So it's, I think I put a lot less stall by the hypnosis part of the process. And I used to, I don't know if this read that, I used to think if I didn't get a result, I'd be like, oh, maybe they weren't hypnotized enough. Maybe they weren't deep enough in trance to accept the suggestion. And I know that is a model that some people use, but I think it's quite liberating when you realize that has nothing to do with it. And it's more about the existing barriers that are still in place that, you know, you didn't deal with because you just thought hypnotizing them and telling them to stop it would do everything for everyone. Right. When most of the time it doesn't. You know, experience tells us that actually people are, I don't know, maybe a bit more subtle than that. I don't know, but
yeah. Can you give us like an example, like maybe take us through a little scenario of how you would help change somebody's mindset without going into trance or NLP?
Okay, so what the basic thing, we need to establish a means of communication with the subconscious. I know some people don't use a conscious subconscious model anymore, which me being old fashioned, I suppose, I'm just like, yeah, conscious subconscious works fine with me. So but I do equate that to an analogy of a captain and crew of the ship, which probably, if you've heard even 5 minutes of anything that I do, I talk about this analogy a lot, with the captain of the ship being the logical conscious part of us, the crew being the subconscious. And the way I think of it, your crew are steering the ship using our emotional responses. So if they perceive danger, they will trigger fear, and that discomfort will encourage us to move away from the thing we perceive to be dangerous. If we have been wronged, our crew will trigger anger, and that will inspire us to take action to right the wrong, all that sort of stuff, you know. And I think our job is to really get a direct line of communication with the part that's doing the emotion that we don't like, I suppose you could say. But I do make the assumption that your crew are looking for the best strategy for the most happiness. And you know, we know that because it's not all just about, I know some people will say your subconscious is purely about safety and survival, and I think we know that's not the case, because if it were the case, we wouldn't do anything vaguely risky for the thrill of it. You know what I mean? And so it's that we know there are different motivations. So if we accept that, then all we've really got to do is establish a means to talk directly to the crew member that's doing the thing that we don't really agree with. And to do that, there's a load of different ways of doing it. We can use idiomotor responses, you know, finger movements. I do a lot of finger movements. And so some people listening to the podcast will know IMRs and they'll be using them. That's probably my favorite method. Again, I think many people assume you have to be put into trance to get idiomotor responses, which you don't. You just have to ask the subconscious to get involved in that way. Or you can do things that are more visual, you know, and have a conversation. You can, so how are you guys visualizing, by the way? Is this a good thing to do on a podcast? Do something visual?
Oh yeah, we can do this. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if you see
as well, so
okay. So the visuals are yeah. I'm glad I bothered to
But
tidy up.
while you're doing it, because it's on a couple of different, Spotify and iHeart and several different platforms, while you're doing it, for those who might be listening, maybe describe what you're doing.
Okay,
and do the visual part, and we'll follow along.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Gotcha. Right. Okay.
If you have the availability to switch over to YouTube to see this, this will be a good time.
This will be a good time.
Always better with pictures. Yeah. So I'll do the visual commentary then as well. So, right. So I'm holding my hand out. All I want you to do, ladies, just imagine that there's a ball in my hand, and just let me know when you can see the ball.
Okay.
Okay. Deana, what colour's the ball?
Red.
Suzanne, what colour's the ball?
Silver.
Silver. Okay, I'm going to click my fingers. It's going to change colour. Deana, what you got now?
Blue.
Yellow.
Okay. Now I'm going to click my fingers, and it's going to change to the colour that means yes. Deana?
I think it stayed blue.
Cool. Suzanne?
Mine was blue.
Do you know what it means that they've just gone the same colour?
What?
Nothing at all. Anyway, so
And aren't you?
now I'm going to click my fingers, and it's going to change. It's going to change to the colour that means no. Now what you got?
Actually, I think it's red again.
Oh yeah.
Mine's red.
Oh, see, I could now spin a right old yarn about how that means that you two are perfectly in sync and all that sort of thing. It just probably means your crew agree on what yes and what colours would be yes and no. Anyway, if I put the ball down, so that's just, so now we've established that blue is yes, red is no. Was that what it was? I think it was.
Yeah.
So now I could literally ask you questions, and your subconscious could respond in answer with a yes or a no response, just by changing the colour of the ball that you're perceiving in what you're seeing there. Now, visual ways won't work for everyone. I'm a rubbish visualizer. I couldn't see the ball there. There was no ball there. I didn't understand what you two were talking about.
I'm kind of like that too. It's more of the thought of the ball.
This is the thing. I could tell that. So you were visualizing in your way, and Suzanne was visualizing in her way. Do you know what I mean? And we all sort of do it in our own way. But there's you could do it with. So if you were more auditory, I could ask you to like imagine a song playing in your mind, like you're listening to the radio, and a song would probably, it might be something you can almost hear, like a song playing in the other room or something, almost like a distant sound. Yeah. And then we could ask your subconscious to choose one song for yes, one song for no. And then when I'm asking questions, it could just, like when a radio switches channels, goes, and it's onto it could do it that way. There's loads of different.
That sounds a lot like NLP. We do techniques like that where we can change colors and distance our emotions or whatever. Because one of the things they'll teach you is if you feel angry, it's you. It's in you. It's who you are. Mm-hmm. But if you're able to isolate it, put a color to it, a shape or whatever, and separate it, now you're able to manipulate it.
Okay, now you're using that imagining as part of process, and you're creating different perceptions around it. It's like submodalities people talk about, isn't it? That's the thing there. Exactly. Now, but what I'm doing has nothing to do with that. Okay. I'm simply asking for your in the same way. So you both have just started doing this, and we all understand that you nodding your head up and down means yes. And we both understand that if you were to disagree with me, you do something along this sort of lines where you say no. Yeah. Now, all I'm saying is, can I ask a part of your mind to give me something else that represents yes and something else that represents no, so that I know I'm talking to this specific part of your mind about it. And then I'm just going to have a conversation with that part. And I'm not going to try and change the colors or manipulate the shape or the what we're hearing, what we're doing. I'm literally just going to use it as a method of communication with a member of your with that specific part. Yeah. And then we go from there, and we hopefully provide the answers to the questions that need to be addressed.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I love that, actually. Yeah,
that's a quick way too to kind of be able to find out if somebody is visual or auditory or kinesthetic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you feel it? Do you hear it?
Yeah.
And we have all parts of that in us, but we usually have a dominant one. I think I'm more kinesthetic.
Yeah. I think I'm more auditory, but again, I'm not, because I'm not very good at this stuff. I'm not a great responder myself. I'm a bit kind of, I struggle.
A lot better at doing it than you are receiving it.
Yeah, well, if that makes sense. Yeah, if that's a weird way of putting it, but yeah, that's probably about right. But the funny thing was, when I was on my first training, I was like it was the Sunday of the weekend at lunchtime, and I couldn't respond to anything. Everyone was getting stuck to things, forgetting their names, all that sort of stuff. And I just wasn't responding to it. I was able to do it with people, and get them to experience it. But I was getting really, borderline just low about the whole thing, And John, the trainer, came over to me and he said, what you down about? I said, well, I can't experience it. I don't know what, I'm disappointed. And he said, well, did you come here to be hypnotized? And I was like, well, no, I came here to learn to hypnotize. And he said, have you done that? And I said, yeah. He said, well, just don't worry about it.
Then you did.
And I never again did. I never again worried that I wasn't a great responder. It didn't matter, because I wasn't there to do it that way. I wasn't there to be that end of the deal.
I'm not really good at being hypnotized myself either, but I'm also a hypnosis instructor. So I have a part of me that critically listens to, the rhythm, what you say, And so
I thought the best way of putting it was a friend of mine called James Brown, and he said, when somebody's trying to hypnotize me, all I'm thinking is, shouldn't I be in your chair? And that's sort of, you know what I mean? You get to that point where it just feels weird if you're on that and the receiving end of it. Yeah.
It is important though that you be able to, at some level, let go and allow yourself to just follow, direction or have that little bit of manipulation or communication to open yourself up, because we all need. Yeah.
I think it's important we can do our own work. I do agree with that. And I think, as much as I'm not a great hypnotic responder, I'm comfortable that I know how to make my changes, and I think that's important. And I don't think we're ever going to be perfect. It's not like we're all meant to be that we're hypnotherapists, so we should be these immaculate Jedi-like beings. There, everything is Zen, and we're in perfect place. We all have challenges and everything, but I do think it's important that we're congruent with the message that we're saying, which is that changes can be made. So it's important we know how to make our own,
Absolutely. And I
walk the walk and talk the talk.
Right. And I think I probably had said this to Suzanne a couple of times, because she ended up taking my course and moving into the office here. She's so wonderful. I'm so glad to have her here. She does have a journalist degree and so many talents that I don't have. So we make a good match. I remember telling her that that as you help others, you generally heal yourself on some level anyway, because you have to be able to kind of get to where they're at and see what you might need, on some level.
I totally agree. I think if we can't, especially with the way I work as well, because I work with a lot of insights and what I would call answering the subconscious objections to change. Now, it would be really weird if I was presenting them as truths that this is the best strategy, and then not in some way adopting them or taking them on board myself, wouldn't it? Right. It was I used to, when I was working in Harley Street, I was the sleep specialist there, so I was seeing all the clients for sleep. Then you can bet that my sleep is bloody awesome now, because all I've done is tell people why this needs to happen and how we get rid of all the things that are stopping us sleeping. And so if I wasn't actually sleeping well, that'd be just really weird, wouldn't it? It'd be a little bit longer.
Is that one of your specialties, helping people with sleep?
It was for a while, for a couple of years. It was because the lady that ran the practice in Harley Street, Zoe Clues, she through various networks found out about the work I was doing with sleep and asked me to come and do it there. But really, anyone that knows me outside of the hypnosis community but knows me as a therapist will know me as an anxiety specialist, because I gave a TED talk on that, and that's had a fair amount of attention, and as a result, it's all anxiety work for me now.
Well, that's really interesting, because that is something I wanted to bring up, because I first of all love the ship metaphor. And when I caught your chat at Hypno Summit, you related that to anxiety. And I know that, just so many people struggle with anxiety. And I guess I was wondering if maybe you had any advice for our listeners who may be struggling with anxiety.
Okay. It's like, which bit of the massive subject shall I cover? Okay, the bottom line here is that the clients that we see who are dealing with anxiety, they've got to the point where, you know, they're dealing what Dr. Claire Weeks would call the second fear, you know, the anxiety about anxiety.
Right.
And the problem, I think the main reason why so many people now are perceiving themselves to be struggling with anxiety disorders, as opposed to just I'm really anxious about life being really overwhelming, is because they've been given the rhetoric that anxiety is a negative thing, like it's an illness or it's a problem. And I think a lot of the time we have to allow our clients to connect with the idea that you're going to feel anxious every day. That's the point of anxiety. This is the most important, you know, like, so we were saying that fear is steer away from danger, anger is right the wrong. Anxiety is, captain, pay attention to this important thing. Right. That's all it is. It's nothing. It's not sin. It could be avoid a negative thing. It could be get a positive thing sorted. But it is a bit of your crew saying, I think this is the most valuable use of the captain's attention right now. And that's why we struggle to stop thinking about it or take our attention away from it. You know, if we can accept anxiety for what it is, then we stop framing it as a problem and we stop getting anxious about feeling anxious.
I love that.
You know?
That is great. For me, it seems like a good definition of anxiety would be that something is taking place that is beyond our control, that's creating, you know, fear, or it's something about the future generally, right?
Yeah.
So you're in your left brain. So the first thing that seems like would make sense is find a way to let go of all those things that we can't control, to recognize right away what is within our control. And that's a lot of times I'll have my clients ask themselves that question. I
think that you've hit the nail on the head there. Is the reason why anxiety changes from, I'm just getting things done as I see them coming up in front of me, to I can't handle this anxiety now, is because we have started the things that we're anxious about, we can't do anything about. This is why so much anxiety kicked off at the start of the pandemic, because everyone suddenly had the most important thing on the planet going on at the moment on their mind, but nobody could do anything about it. Right. So we just had people suddenly getting overwhelmed with the simplest of processes in their life because they had this huge concern weighing down on them, demanding their focus, and they couldn't change it.
And not knowing what the future held.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why I kind of, you know, I'll work with mine right away to release. First of all, you know, the only thing we can control is our thoughts, our actions, our words, our brain, our movement, and that takes a lifetime, right? But if you pull your focus in and you work on yourself and let go of all those things outside of yourself, it brings a lot of energy in for you to be able to, you know, shift and adjust and let go and find peace. Exactly.
This is to bring it into the analogy I use, you know, so anxiety about stuff that's out of our control. It's like our crew looking over the side of the ship at other people's ships and what waves might possibly hit us next, you know, and they're not sailing the ship as a result of it. They're just putting their focus elsewhere, wondering what will happen. And I think the reason anxiety can feel so uncomfortable is because we don't like that. You know, our crew like to do things that achieve something. And as you rightly say, they can only achieve something here with ourselves, our own responses, our own actions, our own thoughts, our own feelings. So if we can keep our crew focused on sailing the ship, normally we can pretty much handle most challenges, can't we? You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're proof. We're sitting here, which means we've gotten through everything we've ever experienced. And that's also, I think, something when somebody has the understanding that we're built to handle things when they take place, we don't have to foresee the future. We don't have to create, you know, scenarios or obstacles, because most of those things don't happen. Most of the things that do will blindside us. And if we just trust that if something takes place, we will handle it when it does. Right?
That's it. We've missed the point, haven't we? We've missed the fact that experience tells us we do get the other side of everything.
Right.
Yeah,
and we're here, and I'm here.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be good advice for our listeners who are dealing with anxiety, is maybe to first ask themselves if there's anything I can do about this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and start to get rid of the concerns that fall outside of your realms of your control. Yeah, exactly.
I like your scenario. I've been using one for years about liking ourselves as a light bulb. And if we put our energy out to what might happen and what's going on here or what could happen or the pandemic or politics or whatever, then you put all your energy out and you're dark.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you pull it in, then you not only light for yourself, but you're also better for everybody around you. So it's being able to have that influence because you're more grounded. You have a better peace of mind. You have a better you're better able to manage your situations. Yeah.
That's a lovely analogy. But this is these sort of things I think that we say to people all the time, but it's about creating the framework by which you know when your client says, "Oh yeah, I knew that, didn't I?" That's not new to me. That's a concept that I'm probably familiar with as being pretty much accurate. But it's amazing how often the part of us that needs to hear it hasn't connected with it, or has forgotten it, or has lost sight of it. And I think a lot of the time that's what we're doing. We're creating a framework by which those little life lessons that keep us on track can get delivered to the right crew member, so that we start to actually respond to that truth rather than it's just something in the back of our mind that we've long forgotten. Yeah.
So you're creating those aha moments, right?
The aha moments. Nice. Yeah.
That.
But kind of, yeah. Well, you know, don't you? You talk to a client and you know that moment where you sort of see them go, oh yeah, you know when the shifts happened, that, and I love that because it's just, and sometimes it's the simplest thing. I mean, isn't it always the simplest thing? If we keep it simple, life gets simple, doesn't it? But yeah.
Those are good words to live by.
Those are, and it is exactly that. It is simple. When we complicate it is when we can't find the answers. There's too much muddling going on,
too much noise.
Yeah. Well, that's what's going on with our clients. They've got lost in their own complexities and their own detail, and that's the problem, isn't it? So us keeping it simple is what actually provides the answer for them a lot of the time.
Very good. So do you want to describe about your TED Talk?
Yeah.
And maybe we could get people to go to it and listen to it.
Oh, okay. Right. So the TED Talk is called How to Stop Feeling Anxious About Anxiety, which I thought was a good title because I thought, wow, that's got anxious and anxiety in the title, so that'll be a good search engine one, definitely.
Oh yeah.
But it's just it's basically it's 18 minutes. I'll tell you what as well. I don't know if you've done a TED Talk, or when I present, I'm just talking. You teach and you're training and you don't script things. TED Talk, you got to script every word, have it approved by the people that are organising the event. And then you don't get to have prompts or auto cues or anything when you're doing it. You just have to remember it. Right. That was like the biggest challenge because I don't think I'd done that since I was at school and I was in the school play or something. You know what I mean?
That didn't even be hungry for me. I got about 30 years on you.
But I'm not used to like memorizing 18 minutes. It's a good job it was written by me and that I say this stuff a lot. Otherwise, I had no chance. But it was, I had one moment in it. So I'm going off topic of the actual talk now. But anyway, I had one moment in it where I did that thing of like, oh, what's the next line? I know it's there somewhere, that sort of thing. And I did about a 5-second pause. It felt longer than that, but it was like, and there was just silence. And if I'd have said something profound before it, I could have just bluffed it as, I'm going to let that sit with you for a few moments. You know what I mean? But what I said before, it was just a really innocuous filler line, and I'd just forgotten the next line. But fortunately, when they do the video, I saw the guy who was the video editor, and I was like, "Did you notice that I paused for a bit?" And he said, "Yeah, what was that about?" I said, "I forgot the line. Can you just edit that out when you send that in to the people?" And he did. He just chopped it out. So you wouldn't know. And I can't remember where it was now. But fortunately, apparently I was about a millisecond away from getting a prompt from the person at the front of the stage that has the script in front of them. But I didn't quite.
Really?
But I dodged the bullet just.
I was going to ask you, because I've checked into TED Talk and everything, and I was considering doing one. And I was going to ask you, even though you send it in, does it have to be verbatim, or could it be basically the same message as long as you stay on the same, Right.
Okay. So here's the thing. So the TEDx event I did, they're independently organized, but they're sort of endorsed by TED, and you have to stick to their rules. So different TEDx events will have different ways of arranging it. Right. The one that I did, the organizers wanted us to submit an idea based on that year's theme, and then also submit a 2-minute video of us talking about what the idea was. Right. And then they had something like 100 and something applications, and they choose 7 or 8 each year to go with. And it was the 3rd year that I'd applied, so I was used to rejection. Anyway, but I was key. Funny enough, though, I tell you what, the first 2 years I tried to tailor a talk that seemed to fit in with their theme, and it wasn't necessarily exactly what I wanted to talk about, but hopefully, and that's why it was rejected pretty much. The year I got accepted, it was the thing I desperately wanted to talk about anyway, and that's probably why it was accepted, you know, because it was an idea worth sharing rather than just, I really want to do a TED talk, which is where I was before, you know. But then when you go through, it was like a 6-month process of working with the organisers to be ready for it, and then you do have to submit your script to the organisers of the TEDx event. They have to be happy. Yeah, I think that's not going to get rejected by TED as an organisation. And then they put it on, they film the event, and they send the videos to TED to get approved and put on their YouTube channel. And mine was the first one in all the years they've been doing it that got flagged and had to go for review before they put it up.
Oh, wow.
Because I started to talk about medication, and I'm not a doctor.
Right.
Which, you know, kind of fair enough, probably, you know, because I happen to touch upon the fact that we can deal with anxiety without medication. And I also touch upon the fact that medication is really, aside from sending you, and in this country, it's like a bloody 3-month waiting list for any counselling or anything, you know. So the best the doctor's got is medication. So I was making the point that that we know it's a difficult process for a doctor to deal with. My point was that anxiety is not a medical problem, it's an emotional problem,
right?
And
even though it's considered a diagnosis, because that's
exactly, yeah. So it's potentially a smidgen, that's an English word, a tad controversial, yeah. So it was something that they wanted to review, and they asked me to send over my qualifications and everything, and I'm like, well, I'm a qualified hypnotherapist, you know, as if that's going to make any difference to them at all. But then they put it up with a little, if you would look at the TED talk, it says these represent the views of the speaker, not TED as an organization. So they put a little disclaimer on it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, when I'm teaching it, I have to make sure that my students understand that they can't use any words of diagnosis. So if somebody says, you know, I have a phobia of flying, I'll have to say, do you have a fear of flying? Yeah,
well, this is it. We're not diagnostic practitioners. We're not, you know, we are effectively what you'd call lay practitioners, aren't we? So we don't diagnose people with anxiety disorders, with emotional. Exactly. We just hopefully deal with what they've got going on at the moment and help them get something going on a little bit better. So yeah.
So you had to verify that with them. Be careful how you stated that. Yeah.
Well, TED won't let you talk about religion, politics, or what they perceive to be pseudoscience.
Which this, you know, because of the fact that it's not controlled by a lot of your American Medical Association or whatever, you know. It's almost like an herb. This herb may help you not to have diabetes anymore, but they're not going to support that because
that's the problem. So that organisation views hypnotherapy. As soon as I said to the organisers the first time I was applying, I want to talk about hypnotherapy, you could literally hear them go like that. They knew they wouldn't get that approved. Yeah, and I think. If you look at any TED Talks that have hypnosis or hypnotherapy in them, you'll probably see how they've gotten around that in the way it's presented. You know,
either that or they're probably licensed therapists, so they're considered a licensed hypnotherapist.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, they're talking from what perceived to be kind of a therapeutic medical perspective kind of thing. Yeah, but anyway, so the point being, it was just an 18-minute talk about how we look at anxiety differently, and we don't look at it as a medical disorder. Instead, we look at it as an emotional response, and that's the crux of it.
Right.
Anxiety viewed not as an illness, but as an emotion.
But as a natural state, it's just learning how to manage it.
Yeah, exactly.
Recognize it and manage it. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. And that's everything that I do these days in terms of what I put out. Is geared towards that simple message, really, of viewing anxiety in a way that stops creating that anxiety feedback loop that we always talk about, where we start to perceive the biggest problem in our life to be our anxiety, and so we get anxious about our anxiety, and that just then spirals. It's about how we disable that vicious cycle, you know.
Yeah.
So I hear you have your own center over there. Is it you and a couple of other people that work with you, or?
We have the Control Academy, as it were, which is, so we literally, it's always been just me, to be fair, training practitioners. We've got something like 100, something like, I know exactly how many practitioners we've got, 103 practitioners we've got. In fact, I qualified the 104th practitioner today. So that was a nice segment. Yeah. But it's always been me training them. But now there is a lovely gentleman who many of you will know from Hypnothoughts Live, Anthony Gitch, who is now my first officially licensed trainer of control practitioners other than me. So he's been... Yeah, so very excited to have Anthony training people in the United States. And we're going to have other trainers in different countries, and maybe even a couple more in the UK as well. So it grows all the time. I keep expanding the system, that kind of thing, and it's it's exciting times.
So, what kind of how many days or how long is the training go?
The training that I run, it's like a 4-day training. It's 100 hours it works out to, but it's 4 days in classroom, and then there's case studies to do to prove competence. And I am contemplating, and Anthony and I were talking about this recently, because people like yourself who are already qualified hypnotherapists, there's elements of this you probably are, like when you've done enough trainings and then you do the bit in the training, I've done this so many times, this bit, that kind of thing. And I'm aware there's one of the days of the training that is geared towards people that have not done hypnosis or hypnotherapy before, and getting their sort of phenomena-based skills up to scratch, just so that we can apply the system correctly. So we are contemplating maybe doing a 3-day intensive for existing hypnotherapists, so they can simply adapt their skills rather than have to start from scratch.
Like advanced, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Because with my training, it's 5 days for neuro-linguistic programming, basic practitioner, and then it's about 7 days, 100 hours for the hypnosis.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those things where people differ about how long it takes to train people in a system, but I very much view it like, so when we learned to drive, and the lessons we had, they weren't really teaching us to drive. They were teaching us to pass our driving test.
Right.
And then we learned to drive properly when we got out there on the roads. And I think there's a little element of that. I think I want to show people the method, make sure they understand it, make sure they understand the process, and they've got a good solid structure to their session work. But I know that as that first year of seeing clients is when, if you look back at when you first qualified compared to your end of your first year, you'll consider yourself to have been very naive at the start compared to where you are now.
You're always learning, right?
Yeah. So I think
even if I knew some of the techniques and stuff that you are teaching, I'm sure that you have spins, an outlook, a technique, or a viewpoint that is going to be educational. It's
different ways of looking at it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think whenever we train with somebody who, hopefully we're going to learn something, aren't we? But it's that point. I know I did this thing myself where I was doing so many trainings when I started out, and I think we've all been there, haven't we? Where we just go from course to course to course. And I recognize now it's because I hadn't settled on what I was comfortable doing. Right. It didn't feel like my process was complete in some way. Do you know what I mean? And it's ironic that what I needed to do was trim out certain elements of it and double down on other elements. But I see a lot of people who are in the hypnotherapeutic community who are talking to me because there's something about my taking the trance aspect out of it that resonates with them. They're like, that makes sense, because I know when I was doing this, if I thought it was absolutely necessary to put someone in a trance and do a formal hypnosis session, I probably wouldn't have got so drained by it, because I'd have recognized the value in it. Right. Part of it was I recognized it, from my perspective, to be maybe redundant to the results I'm getting, So I think that was what caused me to seek out doing it differently, And I think that's what some people are looking for in their practice, is that I'm not quite 100% comfortable with everything I'm doing in some aspect. And I think that's why we keep going and we keep doing all the trainings. Maybe this will be the one, sort of thing,
Keep looking for what resonates with you the most.
Well, I look at it as expansion anyway, because there's things that I could take from so many different people, and it's like, oh wow, didn't look at it that way, or oh, I could add this, or I could take this out and simplify. So it's all about creating how you are able to help those best around you. And And a lot of times it has to do with your attitude, your confidence, your belief in it, because we represent that when we're working with somebody. So if we're unsure, then they're not going to be sure.
You know, you're absolutely spot on. The thing, so I always say that my method is no better than any other method. You know, every method works. That's why there's people using it and getting results with it. But I do realize my results. And again, I wasn't dissatisfied with the results I was getting. Just the process of it. But I do think my results did, you know, improve in some way when I started working this way. But it was simply because they got a better version of me in the process. You know, I was more comfortable in the process than I was previously, you know.
That's
Absolutely.
neat.
And do you prefer working with clients more or training practitioners? Yeah, clients.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's my business is almost completely 50-50. I do half of my work working with clients. I do half of my work training. And I love both aspects of it. And I think I would struggle to be without either. But I tell you something, as long as I am training practitioners, I will always be running that kind of full-on practice because I don't think it's a great idea to train people to be therapists if you're not currently a therapist. And I know it's not like we have to keep up to date with the latest tech and stuff like that. It's not that sort of industry. But I do think what clients bring to us, it changes as the world changes. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important for me, if I'm going to teach people how to become full-time practitioners, I think it's important that I'm doing that already, because you've got to be in the trenches to understand what it's like to be there.
Right. It's part of maturing and advancing and growing within yourself too.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, but I'm really pleased that I still love seeing clients. I think I always will, because I love the process of it. And so I don't think it'll ever get tiring for me now.
It's rewarding, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other, aside from anxiety, any other issues that you feel passionate about when helping clients?
I do think anxiety is like really broad reaching and kind of bleeds into everything that we're doing, I think, you know, but, you know, to be honest, it's a really good question. I've been working almost solely with anxiety now for so long. I think I get a bit of things like performance anxiety stuff, like presenting. And I think that happened a lot during the pandemic when we all went onto Zoom. And it's weird how we can't be in the same room as people, and suddenly our performance anxiety has gone through the roof because we're doing more meetings and it's all like little squares of faces looking at us. And so I quite like working with that, because I feel like that's something I can really relate to as well. And I have a kind of history with social anxiety as well. So I like working with that sort of specifically. But again, it's all anxiety in it, so which is not the question you asked.
But it was a good answer.
Yeah.
The best one I've got, I think. Yeah.
No, but you know, the way things have developed, there are new things that are happening everywhere, from our children, you know, wearing masks, not learning social cues, to social media making you believe that everybody's happy, everybody's healthy, everybody looks good all the time, you know. So there's not real communication. We don't learn how to be able to share and communicate and touch and connect. And it's interesting because I was just telling somebody, you know, I'm from Utah originally, but I've been in Florida for like 52 years. So every year for like 7 years, minus 2020, when the pandemic first came out, I go back to Utah. We go snow skiing, we drive through canyons, and we do all this hiking and everything. And so I know the territory really well. And this last time that I went, just in March, I noticed that walking up and down, hiking, passing by each other, nobody's looking up. So prior to this, when I would do this, because I'm social naturally, I'm somebody who will look at you and start a conversation to the point that it might make you uncomfortable. My name's Deana, you know, but I've just always been very friendly and very social, but it was always sincere. It wasn't, you know, put on, so I could connect easily. And I even found myself looking down and not engaging, just in eye contact. And I was just telling somebody, I was with my kids the other day on Mother's Day, and we were out at a pool, and two girls came in with a child, and we were leaving, and nobody's looking at each other.
No.
And after I got outside the gate, I said, hey, there's a bag out here. Does this belong to you guys? And they were like, oh, yeah, we're going to get it. And I said, I just didn't want you to, forget it. And then I turned around and I said, Happy Mother's Day, because obviously one of them was a mother because they had a child, right?
Yeah.
And it was like they were surprised. They looked at me like, oh my gosh, did you just say Happy Mother's Day? And it was like, it brightened their day and they smiled. And it was like, there's a connect that is not happening.
I totally agree.
It worries me and upsets me because and so consciously I'm thinking you need to go back to how you were because it is affecting us. It does stop the connect, the communication, the ability to read and understand and have empathy, all of those things.
I think this is, for me, I was noticing this before the pandemic as well, because now we're doing so much time online rather than actually in situ. And you get youngsters. All right, Dad. You got like teenagers who are kind of like they're really comfortable video calling you or texting you or stuff like that, but they're not comfortable going out into a social situation and being in that environment. And as I say, someone that dealt with social anxiety, I know that's not a good place to be, because as much as we're not quite in the dystopian future yet. We're not locked in our own little capsules and connecting people via via the technology yet. We do require to interact with people still. And but I think as well, coming out of the pandemic, when we've been told for 2 years that being around another individual is dangerous.
Dangerous, right.
It's not just kids that are affected by that reality. It's all of us that are now potentially feeling a little bit wary, suddenly paying a bit more attention to that person that sneezes next to us, like.
To me, it's such a shame. It's such a shame that we have a fear of connecting. That's that's the thing, isn't it? I was in Disneyland Paris the other day, finally able to get back there without masks as well. It was amazing, it really felt like we were getting back to normal. And we were sitting down waiting for the parade to come along. And there was, because little kids have got they'll just stroll up and just stare at you in the face. You know what I mean? This little girl. Wipe their nose and grab your hand.
That's exactly what it was. So I was looking this way. She was this side of me. And I heard her sneeze and felt it hit my arm. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, there's a bit of me thinking, that's not cool now. And then there's a bit of me thinking, was it ever that cool to do that anyway? You know what I mean? And it was just really weird. But I did think, isn't it nice that a little girl can just sneeze on me and it doesn't mean anything anymore? But I don't know, maybe.
Right. But what, too, they also say that, and this is why, children going to school and everything, they're exposed to so many people being sick. It actually boosts your immune system. As a mother, I had 7 children, so they would come home and bring all sorts of stuff.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Well, I'm getting ready to have my 16th grandchildren. Twins are expected, so
Wow.
That's a different discussion.
I know, I need to stop and process that a minute.
Me too, but it's anyway. So, but it was interesting because I didn't get sick hardly ever, and my kids would come home and they would bring things home because they were somebody else with a cold. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at, like germs and phobia. Because there was never any protection. We've always been around each other. And to understand that maybe being exposed to these things actually helps us to be stronger when we're exposed. Maybe it's not so bad, even. Well,
a lot of, we had a lot of like just colds and flu go around when we started to interact again, just because we hadn't done our usual building up. Totally get that. It's, But I think that, this is what we're going to see is a lot of people with certain, related to what we've been through.
Exactly.
Phobias, fears, anxieties, concerns, worries. And it's like we saw different things during the pandemic. I was, working the way I work. I'm 100% online now. So because I don't use trance, I don't really need to manage their environment or where it is. We can just chat like we're chatting now. Right. So it was quite easy for me to continue working. But I did notice the difference in the clients that I was seeing. All the ones I was seeing before with social anxiety who were frightened to leave the house they were suddenly calm as you like because they didn't have to leave the house anymore. They didn't have to take it off.
Right.
Whereas all the people that had never experienced anxiety before, that were social people, that thrived off of the energy of others, they loved being in a community environment, they were struggling because they just weren't getting, they're isolated.
That's interesting.
It is. And that's why we're needed so much now, is because there's so many people who are trying to adjust and figure things out and find answers. And sometimes it's just helping you to comfortably manage and understand your surroundings and being able to, you know, again, let go of the things you can't control and work with the things that you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Cool.
switching gears just a little bit, and there may be a bit of a motive behind this question, but for people who are dealing with performance anxiety, do you have any, you know, quick tips or words of wisdom?
Quick tips. Okay, the thing that I noticed that it took me a while to work out that this was a barrier to people overcoming it. Because naturally we do things a bit more and we get better at them. Do you know what I mean? So if we, for example, I had a lot of performance anxiety when I started to do any public speaking, and now I enjoy it. I'm really comfortable with it. But I had to do that process of just practicing, putting, you know, the old morning networking meetings, 60 seconds every morning. And the funny thing is, the thing I had to connect the dots with was it's actually okay to really shit yourself before you do a presentation, you know, and really be scared, if that makes sense. Because I don't think, I think it was something like Elton John or somebody, that when they was asked, you still get nervous when you go on stage? And he's like, well, if I didn't, I'd probably stop doing it because it would mean I didn't care. And the fact that we care about what we're doing is why we do get the rush of adrenaline when we go up there. But I tell you what I learned from doing 60-second presentations. I would do, you know, hour presentations, longer than that, and I'd be nervous as I started, and then I'd get on with it and enjoy it, you know. And I'd do a 60-second presentation, I'd sit down and I'd be like this, you know, and I'd have like pain in my side where all this, and I was like, why can I not just get okay with this 60-second presentation? And then you realize the only difference is that you don't get that period of, okay, and now I'm chatting, now I'm doing. Because that's what it is, isn't it? Adrenaline is saying run, jump, fight, you know, swim. It's trying to get you to take action. And what are you doing? Standing still, talking. So you're not releasing all the adrenaline. Now, when you get to talk for a bit, that dissipates naturally, doesn't it? Because now you're getting comfortable. But when you do 60 seconds, it doesn't go anywhere. So you end up shaking because you've got all the adrenaline trying to get you to do something, and you're not doing something. You're aching because all your muscles are getting all tense and looking for some sort of action. And it's just, again, it's a natural feeling. It's a perfectly ordinary thing. The thing I remember learning when I was at I was doing a conference. There was 300 people, and I had one of my good friends was speaking with me. We were doing different. I was on first, he was on second, and he was absolutely. You know, when you see people and they're like, "This is," you know, you think they're about to go and get executed or something for the nerves. And I was sort of just like this sort of thing, you know, like looking around and saying hi to people. And he said, "Look at this, you're loving this, aren't you?" And as if like that was a bad thing. And I said, "Look." I said, Andy, I think we feel exactly the same way. It's just that you're framing it as fear and I'm calling it excitement.
Excitement, right.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to remember, again, as you could dilute my whole message down to the message, there's nothing wrong with feeling how you feel.
Right.
Okay. So when you go to stand up and talk to people and you're like, oh my God, my breathing's going quicker, my heart rate's racing. Yeah. And that's what it does, because you give a shit about what you're doing. So that's good. Yeah. And the only thing that perpetuates it and makes you have to sit down or back off is because you've decided that there's something weak or wrong or incorrect about that response, and that it might overwhelm you. Go through the process. Just do it.
Reframe, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing. And so that was the thing I learned with clients. They were looking to be able to do this without that moment of, whoa, here we go. And that ain't going to happen. Right. And it's not meant to. You don't want it to happen.
It is part of your motivation. And exactly. A lot of times I've always said, when you are going out, it doesn't matter whether you're going to talk to your best friend or whether you're going on stage and talk to 1,000 people. If you address them like you're talking to your best friend and you're sharing something you're excited about, and you're more focused on what you want to share than you are what people are thinking, you know, you can distract yourself from or detach from worrying about what people are thinking. It's easier to say, I'm just going to tell you what I think and how I feel about this because I'm excited to tell you.
Exactly. The real threat there is that you want everyone to like you, but you can't guarantee that they will.
Yeah, and you don't even need to go there in your brain. Don't worry about what everybody else thinks, right?
Exactly. So, boy, that's
Oh, sorry. The excitement and anxiety shoot off the same kind of, feelings and chemicals. So I always tell clients to, like, just tell yourself you're excited. You're not anxious, little reframe, smile, laugh at it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the whole thing about, so that was where, my anxieties when I was young was that idea that it really mattered if people liked me or didn't like me. And then when you realize it doesn't, that's a big burden lifted off your shoulders.
I know, exactly. There's 7 billion people on this earth. If somebody's looking at you and don't like you, don't worry about it because you need to find somebody else anyway.
Yeah, you know what, Deana, it's like talking to myself in a mirror with some of the things you're saying today. It's like we think exactly the same way.
I know. I'm looking forward to learning more about you and excited to meet you in person there at Hypnoarts Live.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, I haven't been for 10 years. I was at the first one and then I haven't been since.
Wow. Well, there you go. And this is a great one because it's the 10th anniversary. And we were talking to Scott about this, Scott Sandlin, who's, the developer, owner, creator. And we're putting these on the Hypno Thoughts Live Facebook page because it's about Hypno Thoughts. And most of the people that we're putting on there have been people who are going or have went. And so what are you presenting there?
I'm going to be talking about working without trance and going through some practical ways of doing that. So a little bit like what we were just showing you with the kind of imaginary ball, but talking about the principles behind it and and how to work with clients without using any formal trance or hypnosis process.
Great. Now, is this a pre or post, or is this during the weekend?
It's just one of the talks during the weekend. I'm trying to remember what day I am. I'm like the morning.
I think we're on a Sunday.
We're Sunday Fun Day.
Sunday Fun Day when everybody's all burnt out.
That sounds good. Yeah. Well, I think to be fair, it's everyone. There's so many people there, isn't there? That it's always nothing is a bad slot, nothing is a good slot, is it? It's like, and you're always going to be up against somebody talking about something else amazing,
right? Ours is hypno surround sound. We're going to do layering. We're going to present together and do some layering where we do some surround sound going in both ears and create.
Oh, nice.
Brain, brain. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I'm fascinated now. How's that going to work? I'm going to.
Yeah, I know. That's the challenge is how to make it work because we can't bring earplugs for everybody and do it that way. We're going to have to use a speaker system or something, but I'm looking forward to checking you out there. I mean, not checking you out, but checking you out.
Yeah,
but if you want me to, I'll check you out because
Brilliant. No, I'm really looking forward to getting back there because I say it's been a long time since I've been there, and it was Anthony that twisted my arm. He was like, "You got to get out there," and and my dim and distant memories of the first one. But they're good memories, and they're. But I'll look forward to it. I mean, Vegas isn't the sort of place that I naturally gravitate towards, but
me neither. I'm not a gambler at all, but I enjoy the way they've set this up because
it's so fun.
Because we were just talking about how there isn't different levels. People aren't. You're a teacher and you're a learner or you're a listener. They don't differentiate. Everybody's on the same level.
Yeah.
So we can respectfully gain from each other and enjoy each other and not feel like we can't be personable with anybody who's there. So that's
brilliant.
Yeah, and it goes beyond networking too. I mean, truly, like all the people that we met, I mean, they're my friends now, So I'm really grateful to be able to go back.
Yeah, you're my new best friend, Tim.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm going. I want to make more friends. That's the point of it. Yeah. I want to make American friends.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, I have on both sides of my family, I have in my genealogy, there's a small place in England that my parents, generation, like 4 generations back, they were in the same town. So they could have even known each other. But I've got some English, Scottish, and Danish, but there's a small place and it's kind of dominant, the English. Yeah.
Whereabouts in England is that one?
It was I remember learning about it. I think it starts with an H. It was a small town in England, but I'd have to look up on the
well, you'll have to look it up, and then when I see you, you have to just tell me.
Might be
not that I know every place in England. It's not like, oh yeah, it was only about 5 square yards, the whole country, you know. So
that's funny. But you never know, because there is somebody else that we've interviewed that I met online doing some NLP classes with Dr. Will Horton, and he I became friends with a couple of people, and then we saw them at Hypnothoughts Live, and they met each other on Zoom doing NLP classes, and they found out way in their history that they were related. That they
no.
Yeah, Jenny.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's why I brought that up, because, you know,
how cool is that?
You could be a distant cousin or something.
Maybe I did my DNA stuff. So my wife is like, she's from Canada and Italy and Ireland. She's got all this colourful genealogy. I'm just from Plumstead, South London. All of my family, they're going right back to the Vikings or something. It's just,
really?
you know,
is
I'm
it
just
the same
this
place
one
too, Plumstead?
Yeah, the tiny little piece of it. Just like, it's just, that's all it is. I have no like colourful history in my ancestry at all. I'm just London, England.
I bet you do, because you can stay in the same place and still be colorful.
Well, that's a good theory. Yeah, but we'll go with that.
So, what's the best way for people to find out more about your message?
That depends. Okay, that's a good question. I should have thought about this. So you can go to my website, thecontrolsystem.co.uk is where I have all the information about what I do. If you actually want to like engage with what I do, what I put out there regularly, probably the best platform is YouTube, because I have a channel there, Timbox Mind Coach, and inevitably, I think it's because the TED Talk is on YouTube that people find that, and then they find me on YouTube. So that's inevitably, and that's the place where I put my most of my energies into, is getting videos out there to help people deal with anxiety and things like that. And that's really what it's about. Yeah.
And then they can look you up on Facebook too. Don't you have a business?
I do have a face. Yes, I'm Timbox Mind Coach on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm on TikTok now. So look out.
We'll put a little tagline underneath telling everybody how to get in touch with you. So if they want to learn more, they want to take your class, they want to learn how to do hypnosis without trance.
Yeah.
Nice. That'd be great.
Is that how they sign up for your training as well?
Yeah, you find there's a form on the website there, and it's interesting because a lot of my social media that I put out there, it's geared towards helping individuals with anxiety more than talking about the method that I use. But yeah, there are some details on the website about how you can train with me and things like that. And I do run kind of seminars regularly, which I put up on my Facebook. In terms of sign up for this, it's a free couple of hours. I'll talk through my system with you and that sort of thing. And a lot of people come to them as a kind of, I'll just see what it's about before deciding to train. So that's another good way in. Yeah.
It's a good way to educate people and get them interested. That's probably how you found it in the first place. You started doing some research and something resonated with you, and you was like,
exactly.
I'm not gonna be a plumber.
Yeah, exactly. It was YouTube for me as well. I fell down the YouTube hypnosis video hole.
YouTube tube.
That is deep. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
So it is a little bit like plumbing. There's a tube.
Yeah.
Kind of. That's tenuous, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, what we like to do at the end of the episode is ask you a couple quick questions so our listeners can get to know you on a bit of a different level, if that's okay.
Yes, go on then. I hate these quick fire rounds. Yeah.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Early bird?
I'm up about 6 every day. Yeah.
Same here. Do you know your zodiac sign?
It's Sagittarius.
Very good.
Awesome. We have a lot of Sagittarius on the show.
Yeah, my dad was Sagittarius. I love Sagittarius.
I don't really know what it means, but I know that I am.
Me neither. I just know I love his energy. So what month is that? I mean, what
December.
day?
Oh, okay.
December.
December the 15th.
Oh, okay, awesome.
I'll be expecting a present now that you know. Thank you.
And what is the one song that just gets you hyped up no matter when and where you listen to it?
Okay. This is kind of a running joke. Apologies. But we do this. I do this thing. This is not a quick answer. Sorry. I do this thing of are you visual, kinesthetic, auditory? And one of the things I do is say, imagine you're sitting in a chair, there's music playing in the room. Right. Let me know when you can hear the music. And then I ask them afterwards, what's the song that's playing? And it's kind of like a running joke now when I'm doing the trainings, that no matter what song you say, I'll say something like, the correct answer, of course, is Africa by Toto. And so that's kind of, you know what I mean?
The rain's down in Africa.
Yeah,
exactly,
that's a great answer.
Yeah.
And what is lighting you up the most in life right now?
What is, sorry?
What is lighting you up the most in life right now?
Oh, wow. So much. Professionally, the trainings and the system continue to grow. And in personal life, as always, my lovely wife, who's awesome and makes me smile every day.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
It's supposed to be a companionship of inspiration and connection, and so good for you.
Yeah. And she does inspire me, really. I wouldn't be doing this. I don't think I wouldn't be sort of out there putting my system out there, training other people if it weren't for her. Because I think it's important sometimes, as much as you can believe in yourself. If you've got somebody that is, even on those times when you forget, they remind you, Yeah.
Oh. And if you could leave our listeners with one nugget of wisdom from today's conversation, what would you want that to be?
Oh, man. These are so difficult, these questions. A nugget of oh, man. Keep it simple.
There you go. First thing that pops in your head.
That's perfect. Honestly, yeah. Well, thank you so much. And it's been such an honor to have you on the show. And thank you for sharing your insight and wisdom with us and our listeners. We're just really grateful.
Yeah.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll have to do this again.
We will do. Yeah, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah. Us too. Yeah. That's going to be nice.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast. If you found some value in this episode and enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, and giving us a 5-star review. Most people may not know that interacting with our content and our channel helps us to continue the work we're doing and reach more people. And we just want to thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for being such a loyal listener. And don't forget to tune in next week and every Tuesday for the latest episode of the Rise and Shine It's Hypno Time podcast with Deana and Suzanne. See you next week.